The first thing he felt was pain all over his body. Not excruciating pain or pain that would weaken him in any way, but a pain that felt strong enough to be a clear signal from his body that was something wrong. He couldn't open his eyes. His nose around him was muffled. He had a terrible hard time breathing. He was motionless. He tried to move his limbs, but he could not. His head was a mass and throbbing. He remembers being taken away by those men in black. He remembers getting into one of those black vehicles and being taken for miles to an unknown place, until someone hit him in the back of the head. The noise, muffled before, hit him all at once, making him grunt from the brightness that burned his eyes, although they were still closed. His body, once heavy and motionless, had become light. He almost fell from the sudden freedom. The pain was gone, and in its place was nausea. Instinctively, he grabbed a hold of the first thing he could. Aside from the research capsule he had found himself a few moments ago. Amazing. These are the signs of the virus that's still in your body, but such a small scale that you could hardly notice. It's likely impossible for the virus to act. A male voice caught Leon's attention, who only grunted in response. Beside him was a man, slightly advanced age in a lab coat, approached with a folder and pen in hand. "I think you'll be an important part of our work, Mr. Kennedy. Follow me," the doctor said, and Leon, still stunned, could hear his footsteps moving away. Asshole. Didn't he realize that he was still nauseous? Not caring after, but Leon leaned back into the capsule and took a few deep breaths until he fully recovered. Opening his eyes, he looked at the dead-colored research lab. There were a few people around, but they were all wearing lab coats, masks, and doing things that seemed too important to pay attention to him. They wanted and were eager to go and do some tests on him because he was immune to the T-virus. Not from far away, that doctor, who was standing near the door, was staring at him with a neutral look. Leon even hoped that guy wasn't annoyed deep down. Sighing, he straightened his posture and walked calmly towards the doctor, who, see him approaching, turned and opened the door to leave the room. Leon hated that place, that room, those hallways. Everything resembled Umbrella's underground laboratory, and uncomfortable memories, to say the least, that made his head hurt even more. "Where are we going?" he asked in a hoarse voice, putting his head to his throat, and the only thing realizing how thirsty he was. Jesus, couldn't they just blindfold me or something? "I'm sorry, but I don't control what the soldiers or my superiors do. You're still alive, and even though you're technically infected, so consider yourself lucky," the doctor said, and Leon just rolled his eyes. "Yes, very lucky, until you guys showed up and ruined everything," he said bitterly, not being able to control the frustration he felt over everything. Damn, he and Claire were thinking about the future. A future that was uncertain, arduous, and even in which they cannot be able to be completely normal, but a future just the same. Only in the end, leave both her and Sherry alone in the deserted road, only with a fucking note. They couldn't even let him get to the money that they had. Leon bowed his head slightly as he remembered this, feeling his anger returning again. "Not everything in life turns out the way we want to, Mr. Kennedy. Too bad," the doctor said, but the ironic tone in his voice only made Leon even more angry. All he could do was get used to it. However, it was the deal he made. He works for them, and he would have to leave those two girls alone in hiding. Easier said than done, of course, but it was better than watching them die. After some walking in, which Leon made sure to keep his eyes on the ground as to not awaken any more memories and distressing sensations, they finally reached an office farther away. A simple office of such a fancy place, so to speak. "Have a seat, please," the doctor said, and Leon did, with a bitter feeling on his tongue for obeying what the guys asked, but he just ignored it. "Well, the rest of the information will be given to you by the same man who brought you in here, but for now I will tell you the state of your body and its changes caused by the virus," the doctor said, entailing a confused look from the young policeman. Oh, ex-cop. Changes? What do you mean? I don't feel any different, Leon said, and the doctor placed his folder on the table in front of him. Well, it would be worrisome if you actually felt those differences, and it's exactly because you don't feel anything that you're special, the doctor said, sat in the chair and the head of the table, grabbing some files from the drawer beside him. You see, the T virus is extremely powerful. A scratch, no matter how small, is already enough to infect you. Knowing your experience in Raccoon, I'd say you have it firsthand, the doctor said, beginning to write something down in the blank files. However, there are individuals like you who are naturally immune to the T viruses, only about 10%, even less, of the world's population. An extremely rare number, the doctor said, and Leon just crossed his arms as he listened attentively without saying a word. Of course, from the way Ida acted, and from everything he saw in that damn city, he knew that this case was somewhat rare, to say the least. Your case is even more interesting. All the viruses that have been produced by Umbrella, that we are well aware of, so used as a base. The T virus, which is the main virus used by them, in which turn come from the progenitor virus, and this immunity, and has kept you from suffering a horrible death by having a small residue of the G virus infiltrate your body, the doctor said, and Leon blinked a few times in confusion. What? I wasn't infected with the G virus. No, but you have faced William Birkin on several occasions, no? The doctor said. Although Leon didn't answer explicitly, the doctor already knew the answer. Let me say it again. Any scratch or any contact with some infected tissue will also infect you. The blood, the sweat, the pus, the saliva. You came into contact with all those when you faced William Birkin. We found some residues of the G virus in your body as well. But aren't those kind of people compatible with the virus who can get infected without suffering another gruesome death and coming into direct contact with the T virus? Yes, that's the case. They turn you into something that is not human, and the more mass they ingested, the more they will mutate. In your case, in contact, although very small and not direct, would be enough to kill you. But your body resists it. And while you're with us, we do need some tests and blood collection. We plan to make your body even stronger and more resistant. Whoa! So you're saying I will be a lab rat now? You will face similar fates to those in Raccoon. What do you think will happen if you are infected with a stronger variation? If you come up to direct contact with some virus, this is not a game. It's not like you're going to face those creatures beyond human imagination. Come into contact with the infected blood and residue, and come out with nothing but scratches, the doctor said, getting up from his briefcase in hand and walking over to the locker in the corner of the office. If you feel so uncomfortable, think of it as a flu shot. Leon rolled his eyes, as if the flu would turn people into indestructible monsters. Not to mention we will need the antibodies for vaccines. As I said, the T virus is Umbrella's main virus. Our goal is to wipe out all these viruses all in the research. Everything Umbrella related. And we will spare no resources, the doctor said, now in the more serious manner in which he made Leon look at him with the extra attention. You seem to have a history with Umbrella, he said. The doctor sighed. That's because we do. My superiors will explain it in more detail. I just want to brief with you on the basics. You will have physical and mental checks every week during your training, and once a month when you're ready for field work, the doctor said, walking over to the office door and opening it. He turned to face Leon, looking at him without saying a word. The young man, however, understood that quickly, and stood up, attempting to leave the office. Oh, and Mr. Leon, the doctor called out to him. Before he could get too far away, he turned around. I know you are frustrated with all this, and I could see that. But know that despite all this, your work will save lives. Your blood could save an entire infected regions. Think about it. Umbrella must be destroyed, the doctor said, with the same seriousness as before. Leon stared at him for a good moment. He was really frustrated, but after all he had been through, and now with a clearer mind, and the more information that he didn't have before, he could find something good in all of this. He could come into peace with it all. The same cop who wanted to make a difference was still there after all, and the thought that he could actually do something great, like save entire areas, made the young cop feel a little excited. It was like internal conflict. A part of him was afraid to get used to it. Fear and suspicion that these people would probably not do as promised were just an organization similar to Umbrella that would be using him for their own benefit. The other was happy that he could have a positive impact on people's lives. Leon only replied with a nod before turning and walking down the long corridor towards the double door ahead. As soon as he stepped through the door, he ran into two dressed men in suits. Security guards, but indifferent those men who had led them there. "Mr. Kennedy, follow us, please," one of the men said, not wanting for an answer already, turning on his way. Leon, with no choices, just followed them in silence. It wasn't as long as before as they reached the elevator. They entered. They only realized that Leon, how big of a place it is, the dozens of floors presented. "Where are we exactly?" he asked, not being able to contain some of his curiosity. For moments, both security guards ignored him, until one of them slightly turned towards him. "Underground," he replied, and Leon blinked a few times. He very well suspected that that was the case, but it was a very vague answer. Nevertheless, he just kept quiet. It was rather obvious of how unwillingly those two security guards were to talk to him. After a while, the elevator stopped and the doors opened. Leon ran his eyes through the long white corridor ahead, with several rooms in which he couldn't see exactly what they were. The place looked like a maze. Corridor after corridor they followed, until they came across an iron door that led to a secluded and locked room. As soon as they entered, Leon soon realized that it was an interrogation room. He sighed loudly when the security guards grabbed him and dragged him to the table. They forced him to sit down without any prior word, handcuffed his hands. Humph, as he could do anything in that situation. The two walked away when the door was opened again. Leon stared coldly at the man in the suit with gloves who approached, now looking at him more closely. Without guns or flashlights pointing at his head, he could notice a little bit of the appearance of the man who had practically kidnapped him. He had short blonde hair, light blue eyes, and was tall, had fair skin, and had a good physique, although he was nowhere to be near as big as the two security guards next to him. "Mr. Leon, I hope you woke up with willing to cooperate," the man said, he taking the seat on the chair in front of the young man, who had just laughed in disdain. "I'm sure you're more than happy to be forced to work for you. Do you even care how I feel?" "Actually, no, but I still need to be polite," the man said, and Leon nevertheless appreciated his honesty. He was not wrong in hating the guy, although enough talk. Listen carefully and try not to interrupt me. You will start your training first thing in the morning. But first I need to explain a few things to you," the young man said in his neutral tone, and straightened up his chair. "While back, a man named Oswald Spencer conducted some of the experiments on children in an attempt to create a race of gods, a race that could be superior to humans in every way. The project was called the Wesker Plan. They adopted children from all over the world and experimented with the progenitor virus, a virus that could create a very intelligent superhumans, superior to any human or animal in the world," the man explained, running his hand over his hair and placing his arms on the table shortly after. Leon just listened, not even looking away. "All you need to do is that experiment caused the death of thousands of children. Of that number, only 3 survived the experiments, causing a differentiation between them and the rest of humanity. One of those children is a man that is you, a Raccoon City police officer, may have heard of, Albert Wesker." Leon arched his eyebrows slightly in surprise. "The captain of the stars?" "Exactly. Wesker tricked Spencer into killing him by saying he was chosen to become a god and led the new world into the next stage of evolution. He was the goal of creating a mass extinction in favor of that evolution. It wasn't just Raccoon City who served as an experiment." "What? Whatever cities?" "Not exactly. Raccoon was the largest incident and the most destructive, but several facilities, places isolated from people's eyes, were also a target. And despite Wesker's plans, Umbrella is not the only one with these viruses in possession. Many samples have been sold in the black market, the man said, leaning his back against a chair and crossing his arms. Black market? Then anyone could make what happened in Raccoon happen again, Leon said, and the man in response just nodded. That's where we come in. Our job is to find and destroy these viruses along with anything related. We're going to do the same with you and those girls. Well, we are here. You mentioned when you found us, but those people in the government who want these viruses for power? Leon said, and the man again nodded. Our own government was a black market customer. Our government is corrupt. A part of it is controlled by Umbrella. What is exactly our existence is a secret. The man held up one arm behind him, and another of the security guards handed him a laptop. The man placed the laptop on the table and turned the screen towards Leon. We have information on the incidents involving these viruses all over the planet. Everything that's happened, and the composition of the viruses, all the mutations and all the victims. These viruses get stronger and stronger. Umbrella does more than experiments and more discoveries and creations different viruses, the man said, but Leon could barely understand what he was talking about. The young man's attention was on the pictures of dead people on the laptop screen. Bodies in states deformed. It was hard to tell if they were people or not. Situations so horrible that it reminded him of the police station in Raccoon. The things he saw. And also things he didn't see, because in no time Raccoon City did see with the baby with a chest literally open with signs of infection all over the body. The particular photo made his stomach turn was the baby's lifeless gray eyes were staring directly at the camera. He just felt that the child was looking at him, silently begging for mercy. Jesus! That's what the viruses do. They're not up to mankind, so they are to destroy it. Being honest with you, I'm still tempted to send a team to kill those two girls, Leon. This time, he glared at him and sent the man an ugly look. The man cared a little, however. His eyes remained serious and cold. We have a deal? I know this is the only way why we're alive and we're desperate. It's not like we could take ordinary people for this kind of work. We also don't have many trained agents in the field. The man again put his arms on the table, leaned his body slightly forward, looking deep into the eyes of Leon, who did not look away. I know you were just a cop, but Mr. Leon, your whole world is about to change. In fact, I dare you say your world's changed the moment you step foot in Raccoon. The things you do, the things you will see, are not for everyone. But keep in mind that what you are doing will be essential for humanity. The man stood up and from one of his pockets took out a key as he approached Leon, still maintaining eye contact. To say that your training will be rigorous as an understatement. You won't survive if you don't give it all you got. This place is not for people weak-willed. He removed Leon's handcuffs and placed the key back in his pocket. But from what I saw in those videos, I don't think you'll have anything to worry about. During the training, I'll be able to see how Claire and Sherry are doing, Leon asked, somewhat hesitantly. Actually, because inside, he didn't want to hear what stopped the seeing the two girls for the rest of his life. That's the man for this part. He took no answer. As I said, we will watch them. Yes, occasionally you'll be allowed to give them some brief glimpse. Through the computer screen, of course, the man said, and Leon sighed slightly. Part of him was glad that he was able to at least see them again. Another part was being frustrated by the way he would have to do it. Well, it was at least better than nothing. Your training will begin tomorrow morning. Get ready, the man said, as he left the room. However, before he left, he stopped and turned around, facing the young ex-cop again. And one more thing, Mr. Kennedy. My name is William Wesker, he said. Leon's eyes widened in surprise. I am one of the free-living surviving children, but unlike Albert and my sister Alex, I do not share the same goals. It's no wonder why Spencer and my brother Albert saw me as a failure. I was hoping we could be great allies, William said, but then he finally turned and left the room. Leon blinked a few times, somewhat lost and surprised, even shocked. It was a lot of information to digest, and even though through the Star's captain, who would have been the captain in the future in the experiment, that wished the extinction of the human race, drove him to the blank of madness. "Follow us, please. We will take you to your room," one of the security guards said, bringing him out of his thoughts. Leon, still dazed at the rain of information, slowly stood up and made his way to the exit, where he followed the security guards without paying any attention to where he was going. His still confused mind was elsewhere. Claire and Sherry were walking aimlessly along the deserted road. The little girl held tightly to the big girl's hand. Their steps were slow, imprecise, and both had defeated their expression on their faces. Everything was going so well, despite the uncertainties. There was hope for a good future. That wasn't until they woke up alone in the middle of nowhere. At first, Claire was stunned, and in a lot of pain, but stunned. Still confused, but soon everything made a little more sense, and she didn't know if it was a bad dream or if reality was playing tricks on her mind. She looked around. No sign of Leon. The two girls shouted his name. They both looked for him in the middle of nowhere with the palpable concern and even agony on their faces at not seeing him beside them. They both felt worse than dirt when Sherry found a small note written, "Sorry," in her pants pocket. Horrible, that's how they felt. Both of them couldn't remember everything from the night before. They only remembered that they were in the car with Leon driving towards the nearest town, but stopped at a certain point. At the moment he stops, however, they fell asleep. It was not difficult to understand what happened. Neither of them really wanted to think about the possibility, and frankly both of them doubted, deep down, that Leon had abandoned them while they were asleep. He wasn't that kind of guy. It was impossible, not after what they'd been through. After everything himself he had done for them. Hell, that kiss hadn't been fake. It was real. She clung on that with all of her strength. But at the same time, what happened? That was the thing. They couldn't remember. Claire felt that something was missing. She wasn't remembering something important. Hell, it was hard to concentrate on her memories when she felt horrible. Her body felt strange. Heavier. Fuck, she even felt like she had fallen off a motorcycle at least 100 miles an hour. At the moment she woke up was the worst of all. She felt as if her flesh was falling away from her bones. The side of her neck burned like it was on fire, and she couldn't even scream. It was the same with Sherry. Something had definitely happened the night before, but no matter how hard she tried to convince herself of this, the feeling of abandonment wouldn't leave her, and it probably wouldn't leave her until she met Leon again. The walk went on in silence, each stuck in their own thoughts, and deep down, none of them really wanted to talk about what might have happened. Perhaps the fear in their words, even if only their thoughts, furies, and disbeliefs, would come true. Not to mention that at that moment Claire had another goal. A few hours of walking, and they both had finally arrived at a town they didn't even care to know much the name of. Claire's plan was to get Chris on the phone. Hell, it didn't even have to be him. Maybe if some college friends or acquaintances from her town. But everything became a little difficult when one was paranoid at the moment a zombie would appear in the dark alleyway, or that some skinless creature would appear on top of a random wall. Damn, she almost screamed when she saw a man walking in front of her. Her hands went instinctively to her waist, intending to reach for her weapons. Weapons that she no longer had with her. However, when Leon had gone, he took them. Walking through the city, seeing those people alive, talking to each other without knowing the horrors that was really hours away, that did not make her relieved of, as she thought. Far from it. For the first time, it felt like an outsider, as if she didn't belong with these people, as if she wasn't there the same as them. Sherry felt the same way, since each person passed near the two of them. The little girl squeezed tighter against Claire's arm, and that was there, deep in her being. The woman then realized that maybe she couldn't be normal. She could go down with her head high into the police station infested with nearly indestructible creatures that made an infested city, but she was afraid to take a step into the busier center of that part's small town. Perhaps she simply didn't know how to react enormously anymore after that night. Or perhaps her companion she trusted with her life was no longer there to help her. And like it or not, that trust was affected by his sudden disappearance. Not only that, but soon she was faced with another problem. Money. How would she be able to call Chris or anyone else without money? Great, she would have to ask now for money. Fantastic. Claire had really had to take a deep breath for this. God, it was so odd. It was as if she looked at the zombie's face for more than a few seconds, that person's face would deform right in front of her eyes, and the characteristic smell of death would follow along with the zombies all around her. How could anyone move on from something like Raccoon? Excuse me. She stopped, letting her mind dominate her actions, and decided to act at once. In front of her stood a man, slightly older age. He could not make contact, but with more than a few seconds. Before her mind again, that man's face took on the more grayish tint, and his mouth got stained with blood. I'm so sorry to bother you, but... she stammered, her hand shaking a little bit. But what was that? She wasn't affected? Would you have some spare change so I can make a call? I was in an accident. Well, I'm in a place I've never been before. She let out all at once after taking a deep breath, forcing herself to take a deep breath into the man's eyes. This was no Redfield thing. The man didn't even seem to notice her nervousness, but something she said mentally had thanked him for. Oh, sorry, miss, but the phone's out. All lines are cut, the man said. Claire blinked a few times in confusion and mild surprise. What? Apparently something happened in Raccoon. TV, radios, phones, everything's out, the man said, and Claire lowered her head and sighed. Of course it had to do with Raccoon. She wanted to think about that city as little as possible. At the moment she had her concerns, like where the two of them would spend that day, for example. Oh, thank you. Can you tell me where there's a hotel around here? Any place to spend the night? Sure, just follow the street, and after 3 corners turn left. You'll have a hotel right in front of you. You can't miss it, the man said, and Claire noticed that he was looking at her a bit strangely. Something had made her feel somewhat uncomfortable, which she made an effort to try and disguise. Do you have any money? No, I don't, she confessed, scratching the back of her neck with some nervousness. And she couldn't help but to be surprised that the man took out his wallet from his back pocket of his pants. Oh, no, you don't have to. Drop it. It's obvious that you two have nowhere to go. Look at the state of 2 of you. I won't ask, but clearly you do not want to say. Here, the hotel is not one of the best, so it's pretty cheap. You can also buy some food there too, the man said, handing Claire $60. The young woman looked at the money sympathetically and appreciatively, feeling bad for all the discomfort and all the distrust for the man. I thank you, sir, really. The man just nodded in response, and also nodding to Sherry before he continued on his way. Raccoon City had been so bad that she had forgotten where the people were so kind, and not the trash like Irons, or the woman that they met at police station, or even Lee. Wait, was she really going to think of him? Sure, she had no idea where she was or why he left them, but still. They wouldn't even be there for him, so she would think highly of him, even if part of her was hating him for disappearing like that. Fuck. Claire clutched her without realizing it, Sherry's hand as they hurried on, feeling that her throat close and her eyes grow moist. She didn't want to cry, and she definitely didn't want to cry in the middle of all these people. It wasn't exactly difficult to find the hotel the man had talked about, much less reserving a room. The hard part was having to climb all the stairs because of the broken elevator, walking down the empty hallway and opening up the door to her room without the tears streaming down her face. She closed the door with some force and leaned her back against the wall, putting both her hands in her face and letting herself slide to the floor. What the hell was that she was supposed to do? What is going on? Where the fuck is Leon? He was fine. At least she remembered seeing him okay. He said that he would stay with them until the end. No chance he would have left them. Something had happened. Something must have happened. He wouldn't leave them. He simply wouldn't. Then why the hell was he not here? Sherry watched Claire cry for a few moments, also feeling her eyes getting wet. She had been holding the crying for the whole time precisely because she didn't want to upset Claire. Without saying a word or making a sound, she made her sat down next to the woman and rested her head on her shoulder. Claire immediately opened her arms and hugged the little girl, who hugged back. Raccoon left a deep mark on both of them, for sure, and after that, neither of them could sleep without knowing exactly where the other was. Leon, of course, was a great concern for both of them, who they really felt owed a lot to him, and simply not seeing him around, having no idea where he was hurt. It hurts as much as either of them could imagine. It hurts in every worry and anger. Anger. They were so frickin' angry with them. Days went by. Things were all the same. The phone was still off. The TV and radio were still off. And this time the money ran out as they were both forced to sleep on the street, usually in private places, because Clara knew that no one, apart from the security guards of course, would pass by, and while security guards were a lot easier to evade than one of those monsters. But when things looked like they weren't getting any better, the anger in them each other grew. As the days went, the more frustrated they become. The angrier their thoughts became to the point where they no longer cared what happened to them. Or at least they tried to call themselves that they didn't care and tried hard to forget, to put it behind them. Although none of them could do that completely. No matter what they did or how much time passed, Leon would always remain in their heads as the man who saved their lives. Then, just then, and abandoned them alone in the deserted road with nothing but a note. But they had a little hope and a little happiness when Chris had finally found them, in front of the small city park where they were trying to look for a ride. Clara couldn't be more relieved in that situation, and most of all she could have been happier to see him again, and above all, well. He then took a name to their parents' home. This house had been left to Claire, since Chris rarely went back to outside on his vacations. And there they learned about everything that had happened. It was there that Claire had told them everything. From the time she went to Raccoon, from meeting with Leon and Sherry, to the moment that he left them on the side of the road. And of course the other Redfield had been irritated. Actually, it was an understatement, but at least he was happy that Claire and Sherry were okay. More days passed. It wasn't long before he became attached to the little girl. Chris decided to stay with them for a while. They both knew it wouldn't be forever, but it was better than being alone, and he helped them a lot too, to try and get back to normal. Even though she seemed preoccupied with something, and occasionally went out for a walk or about something with someone. But honestly, neither Claire nor Sherry wanted to think about it too much. And well, that was the thing, because as a soldier, and as someone who has been through something similar on his mission, he knew where the last thing he would want to be is normal. At the moment, Claire was upstairs at her house, sitting on her bed, staring at nothing. She had gotten into the habit of doing that, standing in the same place for a long time, without doing anything in particular. Her mind wandered through several theories, several situations and explanations, for which would serve the explain of the disappearance of a certain rookie cop. They were also going back to Raccoon and the things she had seen. Neither she nor Sherry had been able to sleep properly. Nightmares had made them wake up in the middle of the night. Occasionally Sherry would sleep next to her, and while it didn't help her completely, they slept a little bit better together. Chris even offered to help with them, or at least in the same room, but well, Redfield pride. Chris's heavy footsteps were not enough to get Claire out of her thoughts, and the older Redfield stared at her for quite a while, sighing at a certain amount of regret. It pained him to see a sister like that, so lost. It reminded him of the state she had been when they lost her parents, or that somehow even worse, given the things that they have happened to them in that damn city. Taking in large but slow steps, he approached Claire and sat down next to her, noticing her move a little in reaction and being aware of his presence. But she didn't look in his direction. "You know, I wish I had something to say to you, the same way I did when our parents died," he began, his voice deep, making her body tremble. It was almost strange to think in such an authoritative voice that caused her so much respect that would sound so vividly to her. The only thing I could say is, nothing will get better if you stay like this. Claire sighed, lowering her head and hiding her face behind her arms for a few moments. Unfortunately, Claire, you're going to have to learn to live with it. Just like you have learned to live without our folks. You have friends and you go out for a while. You, me, and Sherry can watch a movie together. Something normal, you know? Something to forget. Even for a little while, that. Chris said as Claire laughed humorously. Normal? Even that didn't sound weird to her, as much as hearing the fearsome Chris Redfield speak as meekly as he did now. Did it work for you? She asked, lifting her face to look him deep in the eyes. Yes, Jill helped me a lot with dealing with all this. Barry helped me. After all, I didn't just stay at home relieving it again and again. It just made it worse. I know, but it's just hard to think that you're just the person you trust so much would abandon you. I think that's what makes me the worst right now. Chris sighed. Claire, maybe you just don't know the guy and you trust him too much. I told you. You said that many times as a crisis man shows his true nature. And I told you that he saved me both, me and Sherry, more than once. He wouldn't just do that and walk away afterwards. But for me to think that and not know where he is or what happened to him, it just makes me feel worse. Chris scratched the back of his neck. This was a bit complicated. It wasn't like the ordinary rejection or something ordinary. Okay, fine, but you have to stop making it your top priority, okay? That Leon saved your life and you should live with it, with or without him. Even Sherry's getting better, I think. Claire smiled, even though she didn't find it funny. She fakes it pretty well. She's as broken as I am. But at least she tries to change it. She calls me to play, draw, to watch a movie on TV. And if a little 12-year-old girl could take the effort to move on to you too, that party you mentioned a few months ago is coming up. Since you are leaving for college, it would be nice to go there. Seeing your friends one more time will do you good. Before that, we can go see Rambo, Chris said, and Claire arched an eyebrow. Yeah, I know I said Terminator was better. I hate Rambo though, but Sherry really wants to see Rambo too. You could have said no. I couldn't, Claire smiled, still with an arched eyebrow. I just couldn't. She reminds me of you as a child, he said, as they were both silent for a few moments. How did you find us? Claire asked, something in which he had been curious for too long and simply didn't remember and didn't want to ask earlier. I got an email. Someone anonymous was saying you guys were, and it was weird. At first I didn't believe it because I had too many things to go to, many places that didn't make sense. At one point I even had to change vehicles and use it like a disguise. He propped his arms over his legs. Well, I guess that makes sense. From the things you have told me, you, especially Sherry, should keep on what happened a secret, Chris said. But although Clara had heard her mind elsewhere, her hope was inside of her made her think. Leon disappeared. Days later, Chris showed up in a via anonymous email. Maybe it was just a coincidence. But then again, what did she know? She sighed. She really wanted to forget about it now. You know, I'm up for a movie, she said, and Chris smiled lightly at her. Well, that's great. Now we just convinced Sherry that Terminator's better, Chris said as he stood up. Claire couldn't help but give her a slight smile. Hey, what do you think about getting us a dog? Claire asked, as Chris made a confused face. A dog would be more yours than mine. I barely have the time to come over. But I'd rather not. Why? Oh, come on. A dog would be nice. Why this dog idea now? You never wanted one before. Yeah, I know, but I think it'd be good company. Like you said, you couldn't stay long. And that's why you want a dog? To replace me? She smiled. Sort of. I guess that I could name him Christopher. Chris grimaced. Oh, hell nah.